everybody. Thanks for coming to our, what are we in now, September Key Connections lunch. For those of you guys who do not know, Office Key is an organization. Each month we have just a monthly lunch where we bring in a speaker, such as Tony, talk about something hopefully relevant to all the businesses around town. Next month we will be at our Blue Ash office. One of our clients, a company called Creative Dimensions that does advertising. We're going to talk about, I think, just the general transition from, they used to do a lot of traditional print and radio and TV commercials, and just how that's all evolving with today's digital world. But today we're very fortunate to have Tony Blankemyer. Am I saying that?
Yep, you got it.
From 8451. Looks like in the right spot. And he's got a hard stop today at 12:40. So we're going to go and jump right in. We'll have a little time afterwards to kind of network and talk a little bit. But Tony, the floor is yours.
Cool.
Thanks for being here.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, and feel free to make your way, get seconds. It looks like we got plenty of good sandwiches from DeBella's. So once again, Tony Blankemyer, 8451. Born and raised in the Cincinnati area. It's a small group, so I figure we'll keep it relatively informal. And I decided not to lull you to sleep in your sandwiches with a PowerPoint slide, so hopefully we can have just a good conversation. The topic today was about building business through connections, and really what I think one of the big things that I wanted to touch on is when you're looking at personally making connections with individuals or building relationships within your organizations, there are a few key pillars that I have found in my career that I think I'd like to share with you, and hopefully give a few examples from some of my recent work at Kroger, and tell you a little bit about how I got to Kroger as well. So to start things off, how many people here are familiar with 8451 and their business? Okay, that makes my job a lot easier. So in Cincinnati, we're relatively well known. Once we start moving beyond Cincy, a lot of people ask, how do you explain the name? What does it mean? And what do you do? So about 3.5 years ago, Kroger acquired dunnhumby USA, and that's when we made the name change to 8451. During that time, Kroger wound up taking any of the individuals that were working on the Kroger business formally. There had been a relationship with Kroger for over 15 years prior to that. The name 8451 is actually the longitudinal coordinates of Cincinnati and our headquarters. And we say that because we take a longitudinal view of the Kroger customer by leveraging the shopper data that we collect largely from the Kroger Plus card. So whether you're using your phone number or you're scanning your Kroger Plus card at register, that's where we can identify different trends in shopper behavior leveraging that information. So Kroger, as it's a household name in Cincinnati, has over 30 different banner stores in the United States. We have 2,900 grocery stores of those, and with the Kroger Plus card, we are capturing over 98% of all Kroger shoppers, where we see 60 million households every year, 9 million every day. So the amount of data that we amass is quite large. I joined the organization in somewhat of a non-traditional way. I'm coming from the startup space in technology. I was part of a data management platform in town called Zipscene, which is a 13-year-old startup that is still going strong today. When the switch happened to become 8451, we were really kind of looking at how we can continue to accelerate the growth of Kroger and 8451 through both our core business objectives as well as through new industries, new markets, and verticals. So my job was to help 8451 identify trends in the market, technologies that were relevant to the business needs that we have, and a formal partnerships role. So my day-to-day job is leading the partnerships team at 8451 and also leading startup engagement. And startup engagement is really focused on early stage companies that have the latest in technology. I heard a little bit of your conversation talking about AI, so we've been spending a lot of time with machine learning and AI to help process through a lot of the data and information that we have in a timely fashion. And when I've identified a capability need and I found a really great potential partner, I help be the matchmaker, bring them together, and we see after doing some tests together whether or not we could develop into a more formal relationship, whether that be partnership or whether that is even a potential acquisition. So those kinds of activities run through my group. So that's a little bit about me and the role that I do day to day. As it relates to the connections and partnerships piece, I have a couple quick topics that I wanted to touch on that I think remain true for both individually as well as the organization. And the first one is really looking at the who part. When you look at who you are as an individual, that's a practice of self-awareness. And I think we all have probably done personality tests, strengths finders tests, and things like that. But one of the other pieces that I think has been really interesting when you look at it from an organizational standpoint, when you're taking a personal inventory of your strengths, understanding the organization's shortcomings or places where they want to go, and really having a firm understanding of what those capability gaps might be, helps you prioritize what things you may go out and do in the future as an organization. And maybe if you're looking on the personal side, how you can personally better yourself in some areas or just lean all the way into your strengths. I'm a big believer in Gary Vaynerchuk's mantra of, lean in on your strengths and not spend as much time on your weaknesses. There's a group in town called Via Character Strengths that is also a firm believer in really leveraging your strengths instead of calling too much attention on the weaknesses and trying to just build up the things that you're just not naturally as inclined in doing. And I think that translates for both personal and professional. And when you're starting to consider partnerships or building business, one of the things that I've found is really getting clear on the why. And that is largely around what your objectives in creating a relationship with someone are. And when doing so, I think there are a couple different things that I've found consistent throughout successful partnerships, and then also some where when the aligned objectives are lacking, things fall apart a lot faster in the partnership. So really understanding why you want to be there, but then in getting to know potential partners out there, trying to make sure that you're on the same page, making sure you're looking at what the needs of their organization are and what the aspirations of that person or organization are as well. And getting all of that out on the table, really, I think from not only like a culture and values perspective of finding that alignment, but then business, making sure that you both want the same thing. And that can be sometimes challenging. And I would say challenging largely because in many cases from a partnership perspective, sometimes that could also be one of your biggest competitors or someone in that space that is close enough to the work that you do that they may just start to offer something that you bring to the table. But by taking that self-assessment and assessing the partners that you're considering working with, having those clear objectives and lining those two up to understand, hey, I'm not as strong in the technology space, but I have a really strong sales organization. Or on the flip side, that person may have a fast-growing technology group, but they don't have the scale or the workforce to help sell it and market. That's where you've got a potential partnership where you can lean on each other, where you bring your items together, your different characters and strengths together to really grow the business. An example of this that I can recently share in the Kroger company is, as many of you know, because it's been plastered all over billboards and on television with Kroger, is ClickList is is out there. Now we're starting to ship to home as well. Both of those could not have been made possible and get out to as many stores as it is today without the power of partnerships. So when it comes to ship to home or delivery for that matter, in some markets, well, now it's actually all of Cincinnati as well, so I can talk about it. So what you used to be able to pull up curbside, get your groceries in the parking lot and go. In most major markets now, you can also order your groceries online and they will actually take it to your house. Now, Kroger did not want to buy a fleet of trucks. They did not want to buy a fleet of vans. But Instacart, which is a company based out of California, was aspiring to be the best delivery company for retail goods out there. We had the scale and the national coverage that they wanted on the grocery side, and they had the technology and all of the processes and procedures to enable delivery. So that's where a partnership was struck in order for us to get to market in many different neighborhoods across the United States to make delivery possible. So that's an example of a project where both CEOs, both leadership teams had the same objectives in trying to grow their business. Culturally, there was a huge fit in terms of how they organize their teams, how they motivate their development organization, how we run our digital business, and all of those synergies made it a great choice for us to work together and continue to grow. So that's one example from Kroger. The other one is in the autonomous vehicles space, so self-driving cars. In the West Coast, we're starting to get into that space. We are certainly not going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars as Kroger into self-driving vehicles, but there's lots of people out there that are investing millions to do so. So finding that partner that will help accelerate us being able to offer groceries to you, that's another example of a partnership that we've been able to run through the group. So the first two items here is like taking an assessment of who your organization is, what you're good at, what your weaknesses are, or where you want to go, and what those capability gaps are. And the second one, largely being around what the objectives in trying to do business together are, making sure those are all out on the table, clearly aligned, and then also making sure you have a values and culture fit as well. And then the last big piece here that I took a note on is around the how. So once you've decided that you want to get into a partnership with somebody, is really making sure that you have clearly defined objectives, roles, and accountabilities. I said objectives, but roles and accountabilities. So when you're looking at who does what and who's ultimately responsible at the end of the day to do that part of the work, incredibly important, because when you don't have that type of clarity in the roles and in the accountabilities, there's oftentimes a finger pointing that can happen or an excuse that can be made. And I mean, our organization falls victim to it as well, just internally. When there's not a clear owner in the work for large organizations, things just tend to spin. Where if you have somebody that at the end of the day, it is Mark's job to get this done, someone can say, Mark, why isn't this moving? Or great job, Mark, you've actually done it. So making sure that every major work stream or every big responsibility has a clear owner in doing so. And that's incredibly important when you're working with multiple organizations or multiple teams and you just don't see each other as frequently. Transparency is another big piece of the how-to. I feel like setting up a common touch point where you are able to discuss different stage gates, different milestones of being hit, and creating that communication and feedback loop amongst the different parties involved not only will help strengthen the relationship, but then also allows you to not get caught up in assuming that something is going well, but then ultimately, if something gets behind, you find out too late in the game and you can't really proceed. And the last piece is on this is flexibility and willingness to change. So you can set up perfectly aligned objectives, having all of the accountabilities and responsibilities put out there. But at the end of the day, like, no project tends to really run perfectly. So having the agility to make a change midstream or call an audible with a potential partner is also incredibly important and something to keep in mind as well. We've oftentimes, especially when we're going through negotiations on partners, have started to really ask ourselves, how long do we keep the other candidates that we had in the partnership funnel warm in case something goes awry, whether we uncover that they have a huge accounting issue or whether something just doesn't add up on the technology side. How can we continue to work with folks and potentially slide in someone else if necessary? So having that flexibility in planning, pre-planning is always important. So one of the things that I have found in partnerships and in building relationships too, and there's a few books about this, and Techstars, which is a national global accelerator for startups, it's an incubator, they have a huge mantra around this too, and that's the whole mantra around give first. And I think not only does that really, I think, send a really strong message for who you are as an organization and how you act with others. Frankly, it also creates quite the leverage point too for who you're working with. So when you have the willingness to do the first step, to do the first thing for them, there, by nature, will be a reaction that is given by that other party. And even if they blow you off, the fact that you were willing to take that first step, that you were willing to invest the little time up front, goes a really long way, and it builds a great reputation for you and your organization, versus being more on the reactionary side, where it's like, we want to do all these great things, but you got to do the groundwork. We'll only play if you're up and humming and it's a sure thing. I have found in most cases the risk-reward benefit of making that investment early typically pays off, even if not directly. So those are the three big pillars that I did want to touch on in terms of connecting and building relationships. But what I'd like to do too is just kind of open it up a little bit for discussion, questions. I'm happy to answer anything about Kroger that I'm allowed to, or 8451 for that matter. And then when we wrap up the Q&A, I've got an idea. How many people know each other in the room? Or is it maybe recognize faces around office? There's enough head turns that what I would encourage is we take advantage of the topic of connecting and just, when I have to split, unfortunately, for a meeting, try to link up with someone that you haven't met necessarily before. We've got a small group, so it should be pretty easy and efficient. Share a little bit about what you do, and then don't be afraid. I think this is a good space to do this, to talk about like what's on your list right now of things that you're trying to accomplish. What are the needs that you have to get a certain project, whether it's at home and I need a good window guy, or whether it's I could really use another contractor to help with website development. I think we can spend this time getting to know each other as well in that. So with that, I'll pause and open it up for any questions or comments just on building connections.
I'm a partner in a technology company.
Great.
And I'm curious, like the transition from the startup world to more corporate world, how was that for you? And
personally, it was a big challenge. I think there was a long honeymoon period in that 8451's a pretty innovative, fast-growing company. When I started at 8451, we had less than 400 people. We're just shy of 1,000 in less than 3 years. So the growth rate is pretty ridiculous. So being a part of that energy was really exciting. I have also found, if you've ever worked in, I think most people small, medium size in here? Or do we have big corporate too? Call it small. So the big thing is iterations and seeing change. So when I do use slides, I've got one slide that I absolutely love. It's this tiny little speedboat next to a really big oil tanker. And I went from the speedboat where every single adjustment you make to your business, you can feel the effects of almost immediately. It's like you make a personnel change with a 10-person group, you're going to feel it. Sometimes the work at Kroger feels like you're on a cruise liner and you don't even realize you're moving because there's so many people and processes and layers. We're trying to get better at it, but that was a big adjustment for me, was how do you navigate getting things done? And part of that was kind of doing the entrepreneurship way of just, I'm going to own this and, try to get enough interest around my ideas and the stuff I was trying to accomplish with the right people to continue to go. Autonomy was granted early on with this very unique role that I was in, which I don't think if I was in the core business, I would have been able to accomplish what I did. So that was the biggest, I think, adjustment for me was just the sheer size and scale is impressive and incredibly useful in growing ideas. The time to get those ideas to fruition just is longer. So that's been my observation. Sir?
I have a question about Kroger and 8451.
Yeah.
Because as you talk about partnerships, and you have a partnership where you agree to work together on certain roles and objectives, like you said, but then 8451, Kroger bought them, so Kroger kind of controls what they do, and yet 8451 is a loyalty, I don't know if I'm categorizing it right, but I would say a loyalty program. They could be adopted by many retailers, but now it's owned by Kroger.
Correct.
Does that limit 8451's future growth? In that 8451 could have maybe has limitations that it can't work with certain Kroger competitors.
Sure. So the loyalty program is definitely core to our business. I would call us more of a data science and customer experience company in that we touch so much of the customer experience backed by data that it informs a whole lot of other elements, whether it's the price you pay for something, the assortment mix at shelf, the digital experiences if you're trying some of our new offerings. What I would say on the retailer front is in the dunnhumby days, we had multiple retailers in the same industry. With Kroger acquiring us, we have learned that there's so much more that we can help inform them on from a data perspective across the business. And there's many other verticals that Kroger's involved with that we don't even really think about as a regular shopper, whether it's Kroger Personal Finance and Money Services, whether it's the fact that they've got 1,000 little clinics and pharmacies where we can really start to say, okay, with this type of data, we can get into healthcare. We can start to really inform those, like there's a big blue sky out there in terms of what we can do, even within the Kroger walls because Kroger's so big. But we could absolutely continue if we wanted to. It's not the strategy. Go out and say, we can make a loyalty program just like we did for Kroger, except we'll do it for, big box retailer X or whatever. That is possible. We've just made that decision not to. Yeah. And then the autonomy part, we've intentionally maintained an independent subsidiary model with a shared board, which helps us move faster than even Kroger proper. So having our own leadership team, having our own accountabilities, that has really helped us kind of fuel the internal stuff at Kroger as well. Yeah?
With all the analytics you can do and things you can see that as you start the home delivery and things like that, what's the future future of like the real estate portion thing? What's the future of? At some point, this is all just distribution centers and it feeds out to homes. Is there still a grocery store? Or what's
a very hot topic, and it's funny because you would say in some regions the stores formats in general are evolving, and it varies on like what your metropolitan makeup looks like. But the funny, non-intuitive thing, especially in the Midwest, stores are getting bigger. You would say, why would you do that? And I think at the end of the day, Kroger is viewed as a destination, and people are very particular about their groceries. The amount of people that love the concept of delivery is pretty high, but the number of people that want to pick their own produce is also very high. So I don't think the core, shopping experience will necessarily go away, but we've got to be a little bit of everything for everyone because we serve everyone. The stores in cities are starting to change more, and we do even do ghost stores, which we may have a market that had a store that the demographics have changed enough where we don't necessarily want to support the store, but we use the store as a distribution center. I could totally see parts of the store completely morphing into delivery zones, or as if you read the Courier, you'll see that we have restaurants now, and in a lot of the Cincinnati ones, there's like an Eli's Barbecue that you can. So we're talking about store within a store, and that's another model that we're looking at. So the formats and layouts are going to continue to evolve, but the non-intuitive thing is stores are getting bigger. So if you've been to the Oakley one, if you're keeping an eye on the Anderson one, those two are going to be the biggest ones in the entire company, and it's not just because we're headquartered here. If you go down to Texas, it's the same thing. They're huge, giant stores. Yeah.
Different experience, probably in New York City and San Francisco.
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm.
You had mentioned that. I guess my question is more about the kind of the relationship that you have with 8451 and Kroger. Like, how do you guys 8451 make money?
Mm-hmm.
How do y'all monetize your
so
offerings?
we have there's like three major pillars of our business. The first one is we're an analytics and insights business, and we help manufacturers and CPGs sell better at Kroger. To do so, we have tools that they can, if they have their own analytics groups, can access to see all of the shopper data. So that is something that has been around for a long time. To complement that, we have a media side of our business, which if you are a loyal Kroger shopper, you get a little envelope in the mail, and it's got all the things that you buy, plus maybe a couple trials. That means you're a loyal shopper if you get that. Thank you. That is the other half of our business, where brands will support getting a free gallon of milk, or half off whatever this product is.
To your customer base, pretty much.
That's right. That's right. So those are two parts of our business. The third part is what I'd call alternative revenue streams. That's where we're starting to get out beyond grocery, and we're looking at other ways that we can teach people about customer behavior, and that could be healthcare, finance, that could be digital products, new analytics tools, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what the partnership journey looks like? Are you approached by potential partners who have some neat product or service, or do you have a list of problems you're trying to solve and are you reaching out?
We do both. So we have the reactive and proactive. And the proactive is I basically work with our different function and mission leaders, understand what their roadmaps look like, document what their top priorities are, kind of guess based on, it's not really a guess, based on how much time is on that roadmap horizon, determine whether we should be building it ourselves or buy or partner. And if it's buy or partner, then I go out and I try to find the best. We also get a lot of stuff that people are knocking on our doors, or someone knows Rodney or Stuart, our CEOs, and that stuff comes to us, and it's like, you should talk to Starbucks or Tesla or whatever it might be, because that's just a world that I'm not in, but that happens. So that's when things more come to us, and we need to determine, based on all the other stuff, whether it's worth going after or not. And that's measured by time, size of prize, what the difficulty in making it a partnership. Those are the big three that I feel like we're constantly working through. Yeah. Yes?
So if somebody wanted to start a loyalty program, what would be your suggestions for a small, medium-sized business? Are there competitors that help those organizations?
There are, if we are talking small marketing groups, I would say there are a ton of self-service tools out there today that can allow you to get started on building your lists of who your contingencies are, whether they constituencies, whether it's your customers, whether it's your followers, supporters, whatever. Building your list and then being able to start collect information on them. So CRM tools, I mean, there's some, if you're keeping it digital, whether it's HubSpot or something like that, that's where you can collect information, start to track out behaviors. There's a whole lot out there, though. I could probably rattle off 5 or 6 different tools. HubSpot's just like one of the early ones that continues to do really well. Salesforce has a few options as well. That's a little bit more expensive. But I think it starts on collecting information, building your lists, and once you start to understand who your customers are, then you can look at segmentation to understand the value of who is on your list and what they're there for, and then trying to be able to serve or communicate with them in that way. So a lot of web tools out there. I would search for email campaign builders, CRM tools, things like that. Anybody else have suggestions on that front?
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you advertising for them as well? Or?
So we do have an in-house creative group that helps support a lot of the print and digital for Kroger specifically. Oftentimes when we're working with our suppliers and CPGs, we do it together. So we may build a template, and they will then use the art that they use on their other stuff in our template. So that's co-created materials.
I have a question about your selfless scanners, the hand scanners.
Oh yes, Scan Bag Go.
Yeah. How is that going?
It's funny. I would say it's a boomerang tool. It got a lot of excitement, a lot of frustration, and now it's back again. And I would say the frustration piece is, by the time I got to market, the things were a little bit clunky compared to everything else out there. Now you can use your mobile phone, which is a lot easier. It's funny. It's a small segment of the customers, but even a few percent of our shoppers is a big number. So we're there for people that are interested in doing it. But some people just like to be able to take their time in the store, scan their stuff as they are shopping, and then walk out the door when they're done.
I loved it. Well,
Yeah.
I think I was in one of the first ones that tried it.
Yeah.
Over on Glenway Avenue, and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
But I heard people kind of grumbling about it, like, where they're taking jobs away from the cashiers. They don't use any cashiers. Pretty soon they don't have any cashiers at all.
Yeah.
I mean, is it for kind of downsizing, like is save on stuff? Because I also see people going up and down the aisle with the shopping carts for the click list.
Correct.
So
Correct.
is it kind of balancing out?
We're definitely not reducing staff, I can tell you that. It is largely a customer experience thing. There's theories that it will cut down wait times for those that use check lane, but not necessarily remove the check lane altogether. It's just not, the volume of people using it wouldn't warrant removing full or part-time staff.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's cut down on my time because I can just scan as I go.
Yeah, and you know where everything is, so boop, 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 go.
Have you gotten negative feedback on the self-checkout?
I'm sure we do every day in our call centers.
Are you working on changing that system, or is it just
Yes. So check lane is evolving in general, and I know the machines themselves are getting refitted, like depending on, there's a couple different models out there, so that's one piece that's definitely, I know it's being worked on.
Does Amazon Prime push you guys in different directions?
I think it definitely adds a sense of urgency to certain topics. So when you look at, especially Amazon, Walmart, the big box retailers that have been around and competing with us for quite some time, I believe that they are certainly pushing a customer expectation. 2-day delivery is now a baseline expectation when you order stuff online, and without Amazon that would not exist. We want to be there for those that want to ship, so I believe that is one of the elements that got us there. But there's definitely we don't want to get into everything that they're doing. That's a fact too.
Focus on your strengths.
That's right. Focus on your strengths. Thank you. Yeah, I got time for one more. We'll wrap it up with you.
Does 8451 do anything on the supply side, like the logistics of getting produce where it needs to go?
We do. So there's a company that was in town. It was a technology group called Market 6. And they had, I believe they had like 40 people here, and then they had a technical group out in Chicago with about 100 folks. And we acquired them about a year after we were acquired. So we're all under the same roof. So they follow the tracking of product, and then we follow the tracking of customer behaviors. So then you have both sides of the coin. So yes, we track that under 8451 now. It's all under our roof. Yeah, but there's lots that we can learn in terms of forecasting and things like that on the supply side that we're still continuing to try to improve, whether it's stock outs and things like that when they don't have an item at shelf that you want or something like that. So forecasting is still a big area of emphasis. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah.
Good discussion. I think we'll take his advice too. What I'd like to do actually is, if you guys want to stick around and talk a little bit while we're here for a few minutes, why don't we go around the room and just say, since a lot of us don't know each other,